Children of the Damned was originally released in 1964. It was directed by Anton Leader, and it starred Ian Hedry and Barbara Ferris. Now, this is a sequel to the 1960 film Village of the Damned, and once again, it asks us to beware the stairs. We have some children with some really freaky powers, but does it live up to its predecessor? Well, we will talk about that. But first, let's take a look at Children of the Damned. Now, one of the first things I want to talk about is the director, Anton Leader. He mostly did television work, but he's done some good things in TV. One of them was an episode of the original Star Trek, I believe it was from season 3, and it was called For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. He did that one. And he also did a couple episodes of The Twilight Zone, and if you've looked at some of my other videos, you've probably seen that I am a big fan of The Twilight Zone, and he did one that is probably one of my favorites. It's called Midnight Sun, and it's a great episode, and you should check it out. And so he did this film, which is cool. So this film kind of follows the same pattern as the predecessor, Village of the Damned. It's about these children that are born to these mothers under mysterious circumstances. The mothers don't remember conceiving of them. It's kind of like an immaculate conception sort of thing, and they have these strange qualities. They stare, they don't talk much, they're very robotic, but also they have the power to manipulate people, kind of put the whammy on you, so to speak, and make you do things that you ordinarily wouldn't do, and it's kind of like a defense mechanism. So this film is doing that as well as the predecessor. They both did that, and we get in kind of the same thing here. Now, there are some differences in this movie, though. Mostly has to do with these children. They're not in one village, like in Village of the Damned, they were all born in the same part of England, a little village. Here, the children come from different parts of the world. So there's a child in every major country that is born like this. There's one from England, there's one from America, there's one from the USSR, there's one from China, there's one from India, and there's one from, I think, Nigeria. They're from all over the world. And they end up coming to England, they're in each country's embassy. They're brought there to be studied, so to speak. But of course, they don't want to be studied because they don't want to be poked and prodded and told what to do. So they use their whammy power on the adults, and they end up leaving their embassies that they are housed at, and they come together and they hole up in this Gothic church. It's run-down, very Gothic old church, and that's where they're going to set up and stay while all the scientists and everyone else try to figure out what to do about them. And that's more or less the setup of the plot here. Now, where I think this diverges from the first movie is in the way the children look. In the first movie, they were all creepy clones of each other. They had this white hair, and they just looked creepier to me than they do in this movie. In this movie, they don't have that otherworldly look. They look more human, and they look more normal. They're just staring, and they're doing that act, but they don't have the creepy, weird look that the first movie, I think, pulled off just a little bit better. But the film does its own thing, too, because it leaves the nature of what the children are a little bit more ambivalent than the first film. The first film really did kind of lay into the idea that these were aliens that were causing this. And in this movie, it alludes to that, but it doesn't flat out say that. And it also gives you kind of a thought that maybe they're not aliens. Maybe they are just the next step in human evolution that just happen to have in these 6 different parts of the world. We don't really get a full answer on that, but I think that's okay. It being ambiguous in that way gives it, I don't know, just a little bit of mystery. And I appreciate it for that. And by not just coming out and saying, hey, they're aliens. It just gives us something to think about, and I like that. As always, I have the clipboard of creeps here. You know, I wasn't able to find a whole lot of information on this one. Now, I'm sure it's out there. I just didn't do a very deep dive, but I'm sure there's plenty of information if I really wanted to look. But I just did a little bit of gleaning, and I found a couple interesting things I thought I'd talk about. Now, the first one is that the opening titles specifically say that this is a sequel to John Wyndham's The Midwich Cuckoos. Now, I mentioned in my review of Village of the Damned that that was the original source material for that film. It wasn't called Village of the Damned, the book. It was called The Midwich Cuckoos. And that's because cuckoo birds lay their eggs in nests of other birds, and the other birds hatch them and raise them. And that was what they were alluding to. So there were these alien kids being raised by people that were implanted against their will. And I just think it's interesting that this film flat out says that it's a sequel to that book. So that might inform kind of what I just said before about how this doesn't really tie into the first film that much. So maybe in the filmmakers' minds, they were actually making a sequel to the book. I don't know. I haven't read the book, but I just thought that was interesting to note how they specifically go out of the way to say it's a sequel to the book. Something to think about. Ron Goodwin had composed the score for Village of the Damned, 1960, and he returned for this film. So there was some connecting there, and that it had the same composer, and it is a good score, so that's something to note too. For my final thoughts, I will say that if I had to put this film against Village of the Damned, I do feel that Village of the Damned is probably the superior of the two movies, mainly because I think that one was more atmospheric. I feel like the children were more creepy. The creep factor was just a little bit higher in that first movie, and I don't know, there was just a vibe about that one that was just creepy and scarier, whereas this one is a little bit more subtle. There's a lot more dialogue, and the scare moments are a little bit further apart in this one. I will say, though, that this does have a very suspenseful ending, and I'm not one to go into big detail about that in these videos because there's a chance you might not have seen this, or it might have been a long time since you've seen it, and I want you to experience that if you choose to watch this. It has a suspenseful, good ending that I think took some bold choices, and I appreciate it for that. I do think it is a good film. I think it's worth watching. I actually caught it on HBO Max. It's there currently. So if you have HBO Max and you are interested, I do recommend checking out Children of the Damned. On its own, it is definitely a good film. Does it work as a true sequel to the first one? Maybe, maybe not. I do feel like it's more of its own thing, taking the similar themes and doing its own thing with it. But definitely a good time at the classic films, and I enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend you check it out. All right. As always, thank you for taking the time to just tune in and watch my videos. I really appreciate that you take a few minutes out of your day and listen to me talk about these movies. I have a lot of fun with it, and I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, please consider subscribing, maybe giving it a like. That will just help this video and the rest of my videos on my channel get a little bit more exposure, and I would appreciate that because I do enjoy talking about these classic films, and I'd like to keep it going for a while, so I appreciate your support. All right, that's it for this week, and we'll be coming back at you real soon with some more classic films. So until then, have a good one.